Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Jayam Vishnupad Paramhansa Parivrajikacharya Ashtotara Shatta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Ashtotara Shatta Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nantigodi Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Kunta Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Jani Thakur Prema.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, your voice has become very soft now. I'm not sure. You can either come near to the mic or maybe
Yes.
increase the volume.
Let's have a look here. Yeah,
it's much better now.
That's better?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, so reading from Srila Prabhupada Leela Amrita. This is the chapter entitled A Lot of Ground to be Covered. And I'll read a paragraph which is finishing one section, and then I'll read another section. So here we go. On Prabhupada's last day in Allahabad, a Mr. Gaur Kishore visited him in his tent, inviting him to Benares. As chairman of the 45th annual festival commemorating Lord Chaitanya's visit to Benares, Mr. Gaur Kishore wanted Prabhupada to attend the festival as the honored guest. When Prabhupada said he felt ill and that perhaps some of his disciples could go in his stead, Mr. Gaur Kishore persisted until Prabhupada finally agreed. But first, Prabhupada wanted to visit Gorakhpur. So this is Gorakhpur, February 3rd, 1971. The Arda Kumbh Mela over, some devotees went to Delhi, some to Bombay, and others to Calcutta. Prabhupada and the remaining devotees went to Gorakhpur, a 10-hour journey on the antiquated meter gauge railway. Prabhupada had been invited by his only disciple in Gorakhpur, Dr. R.P. Rao, now Ramananda, a research chemist who had met Prabhupada in San Francisco, taken initiation in 1967, and since returned to his family and 4 children to teach chemistry at Gorakhpur University. Prabhupada and his disciples moved into crowded quarters at Ramananda's modest home, and about 100 people attended Prabhupada's lecture that evening. Prabhupada already had plans for a Radha Krishna temple on the Gorakhpur University campus, as well as accredited courses and degrees in Krishna consciousness, BA, MA, and PhD. He envisioned graduates going out to teach Krishna consciousness in schools, colleges, and temples all over the world. He inspired Ramananda and a group of his friends to form a committee to introduce Krishna consciousness within the university, and he initiated about 12 disciples. Since they all professed to be following the rules against illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling, and had been lifelong vegetarians, he waived the usual 6-month trial period. He asked them to chant 16 rounds daily and to make their city Krishna conscious. In his absence, they should maintain Ramananda's home as an active ISKCON center and try to establish courses in Krishna consciousness at the university. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, Chapter 13, text number 16. Prasajati kwapi lata pujashrayas tad ashraya vyakta padaduja spriha kvachid kadachid dari chakratastrasan sakyang vidate baka kankagridrahi prasajati kwapi lata pujashrayas tad ashraya vyakta padaduja spriha Kvachit kadachit dari chakratastrasan sakyang virate baka kankagridrahi prasajati kwapi lata bujashrayas tadashraya vyakta pada dujaspriha Kvachit kadachit dari chakratastrasan sakyang virate baka kankagridrahi. Word for word. Prasajati becomes more and more attached. Kwapi, sometimes. Lata Buja Ashraya, who takes shelter of the soft arms of his beautiful wife, which are like creepers. Tat Ashraya, who are sheltered by such creepers. Avyakta Para, who sing unclear songs. Dvijaspriha, desiring to hear birds. Kvachit, sometimes. Kadachit, somewhere. Hari Chakrata Trasan, being afraid of the roaring sound of a lion. Sakyam, friendship. Vidate, makes. Baka Kanka Gridrahi, with cranes, herons, and vultures. Translation. Sometimes the living entity in the forest of material existence takes shelter of creepers and desires to hear the chirping of the birds in those creepers. Being afraid of roaring lions in the forest, he makes friends with cranes, herons, and vultures. Purport. In the forest of the material world, there are many animals and birds, trees and creepers. Sometimes the living entity wants to take shelter of the creepers. In other words, he wants to be happy by being embraced by the creeper-like arms of his wife. Within the creepers, there are many chirping birds. This indicates that he wants to satisfy himself by hearing the sweet voice of his wife. In old age, however, he sometimes becomes afraid of imminent death, which is compared to a roaring lion. To save himself from the lion's attack, he takes shelter of some bogus swamis, yogis, incarnations, pretenders, and cheaters. Being misled by the illusory energy in this way, he spoils his life. It is said, Haring vina mriting na taranti. No one can be saved from the imminent danger of death without taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Hari indicates the lion as well as the Supreme Lord. To be saved from the hands of Hari, the lion of death, one must take shelter of the Supreme Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. People with a poor fund of knowledge take shelter of non-devotee cheaters and pretenders in order to be saved from the clutches of death. In the forest of the material world, the living entity first of all wants to be very happy by taking shelter of the creeper-like arms of his wife and hearing her sweet voice. Later, he sometimes takes shelter of so-called gurus and sadhus who are like cranes, herons, and vultures. Thus, he is cheated both ways by not taking shelter of the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Amagyanatamarandasya Gnanjana Shlakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. Sometimes the living entity in the forest of material existence takes shelter of creepers and desires to hear the chirping of the birds in those creepers. Being afraid of roaring lions in the forest, he makes friends with cranes, herons, and vultures. So we're in the fifth canto, a wonderful canto, a controversial canto, a canto that can make some people drop their bhakti. Of course, it's not really controversial, it's just the facts. But sometimes we don't like hearing the facts, we can't accept it, it's too far out, it doesn't agree with modern science, so it becomes difficult to accept. So this is the modern disease. We want to verify everything with our mundane senses, and so certain things that may be said in the fifth canto, we can't. We just have to accept on faith, and we may not have so much faith. So some people are from a more cultured background. They may have more faith inherently, and they can accept these statements. And Srila Prabhupada even said himself, as we'll read somewhere in the Lilamrita, I can't remember exactly where, he even said himself, our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, who has written the Bhaktivedanta purports, he himself even said, some of the stuff in the fifth canto I can't even understand. I accept it on faith. So who are we? So if he is accepting it on faith and not rejecting it, that's our parampara. We don't have to expect that we're going to understand every single thing in the fifth canto. But these particular verses here, generally we can accept. These ones are a lot more closer to home. These particular verses about the relationship between man and woman, the family, our material desires, that stuff, okay, yeah, we can accept that. That's not so difficult to accept. So this section here, it's pretty straightforward. Of course, some people are atheistic. They don't believe in God, so that part of it they'll find difficult to accept. But generally speaking, yeah, we have material desires and we want to enjoy in this material world. It's pretty hard for anyone to argue with that. Everyone wants to enjoy, you know. It's what you'll hear from people when you go somewhere and you do something. Their catch line, you know, enjoy. In other words, you are the enjoyer, you should enjoy. And also, I am the enjoyer, so I should enjoy. Let's all enjoy and forget about God. That's basically the bottom line in this material world. So anyway, focusing particularly on this verse, the first thought that came to mind is that the point being made, our spouse will not save us from death. Our partner, our friends, our family, they will not save us from death. Shukadeva Goswami points this out right in the beginning of the second canto, right at the get-go. He just says, look, these people, your family, your friends, your wife, ain't going to do it. They're fallible soldiers, and including your own body as well. Your body's not going to save you from death. But basically, you're taking shelter of all these fallible soldiers. That's not right. What you really need to do is take shelter of the chanting. It's the doubtless and fearless way of success. And so we're hearing a similar thing in the verse today in the purport. So while that's true, our spouse will not save us from death. It's okay to have a good relationship with your spouse. We don't want to go to the other extreme and say, okay, you're not going to save me from death, so to hell with them. No, we need to be balanced. And actually, not only should we have a good relationship with our spouse, it should be a happy relationship, so that's okay to have that desire. If our spouse or partner is an advanced devotee, okay, perhaps they can save us from death. So if that person that you're married to happens to be a devotee, okay, you're very fortunate, especially if they're very fixed up in their Krishna consciousness, then sure, actually you can take shelter of them. So there's details here. In and of themselves, as a spouse, they can't save you, but as a devotee, in their role as a devotee, they can potentially save you. So that's the differentiation. So this verse in general is referring to non-devotees. The other point that's mentioned here is old age, how it's like a lion in the cave, death. It's coming. I think elephant is the other thing that's mentioned in the section as being representative of death. We hear different things. I think in another analogy, the tiger represents, or the snake represents time. The tiger can also represent death. So these different animals, different analogies, they represent death. But old age is, Prabhupada calls it the yellow light. Slow down. You're getting close to the stop, which the red light of death. So at all stages of life, we should be endeavoring to be Krishna conscious and taking our spiritual life seriously. But especially so when we're getting up in the years, it's even more important to focus on it. And also, of course, if you like Parikshit Maharaj and you get a ding, here you go, you got 7 days, mate. If you get a warning like that, also one should take it seriously. Just like there's the devotee Janaki Nath, he was like 30 something, 32 maybe, and he got told, you know, you've got like a year to live or something. So he had to get serious, and he did, and he had a very glorious end to his life. But the point is always made that any of us can die at any moment. So we can't put it off. We always have to be prepared. Car accidents, very common thing. Most of us are driving a car every day. So at any moment, that's, as Prabhupada says, we travel at breakneck speed. That's actually what's happened when you have an accident and you're like, boom, you break your neck and then you die. There's no interval there, you know. Some people may be fortunate and survive the accident and have some more time, but often it can be instant. So yes, at any moment we can die. And that's ultimately, it's not such a depressing thing for devotees to speak about because we understand this reality. It's the very foundation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Our main text that we focus on, which we give class on every day, is all about somebody who was talking to somebody else, and they were talking about what's the most important thing to do when I'm about to die. So that was Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami. Parikshit Maharaj is saying, hey, dear Shukadeva Goswami, great soul, I've got 7 days left to live. What should I do? So this isn't a new topic for us. So for it to come up in the 5th canto, it's nothing new. But we should always be prepared. And this, what we're doing right now, is one way to prepare for it, is that we're daily attending Srimad Bhagavatam class. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Ideally, we should hear Srimad Bhagavatam every single day. We make a vow to chant every day. That's there. But ideally, we should also be hearing the scriptures every day. And on top of that, associating with devotees. So if we attend the Bhagavatam class, then we can do 2 things at once. We're hearing from the scriptures and we're associating with devotees. So it's a sure way to inoculate yourself daily by attending Bhagavatam class. So in the 19th chapter of the 1st canto, Parikshit Maharaj, he says, O trustworthy Brahmanas, I now ask you about my immediate duty. Please tell me the duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically of those who are just about to die. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport, The question relating to the dying man is most important because everyone is a dying man. So that's our reality. We're living in Mritu Loka, the world of death. As they say, there are two things in this world which are certain: death and taxes. The government will try to take your money and you will die. These two things are infallible principles of this world. So self-realization should always be on our mind. The other thing is that, okay, knowing all of this, where should I go? What should I do? So that was Parikshit Maharaj's question. And Prabhupada makes the point, because it's relative to this particular verse, that being afraid of roaring lions in the forest, he makes friends with cranes, herons, and vultures. So, okay, then we understand the precariousness of our situation, but then we have to go to the right person. If we have illness of the body, we go to a doctor. We don't go to anyone else. If we have illness in the mind, we go to a psychiatrist. That's their department. If our car's broken down, we take it to a mechanic. So we go to the right person for the particular thing that we require. They need to be qualified. So similarly, if we want to become free from this problem of death and make a solution to it, we need to go to the right spiritual authority who can show us how to overcome it. As there's a very nice point mentioned in the verse by Prabhupada, the word Hari indicates the lion as well as the Supreme Lord. To be saved from the hands of Hari, the lion of death, one must take shelter of the Supreme Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So ultimately only Krishna can save us. The devotees don't save us. They do in the sense that they're acting on behalf of Krishna, but they in and of themselves can't actually save us. They can only save us being a conduit of Krishna's mercy, just like we sing in the prayers in Mangala Arati every morning. Sangsara davana lalita loka janaya karunya ganaganatvam. So the spiritual master, he's carrying the mercy of the Supreme Lord. He doesn't actually have his own mercy to give. It's all coming from Krishna. And the same with everything. Our body isn't ours. It's made of the material elements. They're not ours. That's Krishna's property. Our intelligence, that's not ours. Sapasya hridi sanivishto matasmitir jnanam apohanam cha. That's Krishna giving that to us as well. So basically, everything's Krishna's. The only thing we have is our independence as a soul to choose to surrender or not. That's really all we've got. So all the mercy that comes, that's all ultimately emanating from Krishna. So the devotees, they will tell us to take shelter of Krishna. So Krishna says, Sarvadharman parityaja mamikam sharanam vraja. And the devotee will say, yes, you should surrender to Krishna. And that's the solution. So I thought I'd focus more. I don't know how much time I've got left with reading Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita and the shortness of these morning classes. There's always so much to talk about and not so much time, but that's the situation in the material world. The Kala Chakra is chasing us. Wanting to be happy in this material world is not a problem. The desire to have a good relationship with one's spouse is not a problem. Having affection, being embraced by one's partner, that's not a problem. Having nice, loving exchanges, sweet words, that's not a problem. But the point is made is that, okay, that's all nice, but we still need the spiritual to save us from death. Nice exchanges, loving exchanges in this material world aren't going to save you from death. They may make you peaceful, and we're not against being peaceful. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, how can there be any happiness without peace? If we don't have a peaceful home, then obviously we're not going to be happy. Peace needs to be there first. So we can do all of that, but we obviously always need the spiritual ultimate solution, the ultimate insurance policy. So then doing that, unfortunately, we may go to the wrong person and again get cheated. Some of us may have already had experience of that in this lifetime. We've tried different spiritual paths and they didn't really go anywhere. But the thing that is quite on my mind at the moment is having a stable foundation to practice spiritual life in. I've heard a lot of people talking about this. I've heard Vrajabihari Prabhu, senior disciple of Radhanath Maharaj, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, who will be here very, very soon, arriving today even possibly, tomorrow. He talks about this a lot. I've heard so many talks of his on this topic. SB Keshava Maharaj, he talks about it. So many talk about it. And it's becoming a more and more prominent thing as people becoming more and more degraded in Kali Yuga. As we were recently hearing from His Holiness Dave Amrita Swami, the age group 18 to 30 is currently the most unhappy age group. Previously, it was the age group, 40 to 50s, people in their midlife crisis kind of zone when you're supposed to take Vanaprast. But of course, we forget what that is in modern society. So that was a natural, yellow light. It was natural for them to become unhappy because they start questioning things. But now it's the 18 to 30 year olds because modern society is such a mess. So because they're so unhappy, it makes it difficult for them to take to spiritual life because they can't even get themselves together materially. So a lot of the talks that devotees are now giving are focusing on just being a human being. We can't teach people Srimad Bhagavatam if the audience still doesn't know how to be a human being. So Dave Amrita Maharaj often points out how Srimad Bhagavatam is showing us something that's so high, so far beyond us. It's taking a human civilization, a proper working human civilization with people with proper human qualities, with Varnashram Dharma and everything, good family lives, and then Bhagavatam is criticizing that. So we have none of those things practically in the modern world. So it seems like, well, actually, I'd like all those things that the Bhagavatam's criticizing because I don't have any of them, and that would actually make me happy. So, so anyway, we do need a stable foundation to practice spiritual life. As Srila Prabhupada said, health, sadhana, service. If we're physically a mess, if we're mentally a mess, if we're intellectually a mess, emotionally a mess, it's going to be very hard to chant our rounds. So we at least need, our physical health together. We need to lead our mind somewhat peaceful, so we can just chant Hare Krishna and focus on the sound of the holy name. So these different aspects are there. There's the physical aspect, sleep, exercise, diet. There's the emotional, our relationships with so many different people. There's the intellectual, when you have needs for, something that makes sense, books to read, skills to learn, being creative. And then, of course, the spiritual need, ultimately, which is what Bhagavatam is ultimately giving us. We have the sadhus, the gurus, the shastra, the holy name, the deities. So we have different needs. And just because Krishna will save us from death doesn't mean that everything else is useless. We need to take care of all different aspects of our life. And previously, people knew how to do that. But in the modern world, we generally don't. So we come to Krishna consciousness, and we also have to learn so many other just basic material skills, how to have proper relationships, how to say please and thank you, how to have empathy and actually care for people, how to eat properly, not eat too much, not to eat too little, sleep properly, all these things. And then we can actually do our sadhana properly. If we're doing that nicely, then we can actually read without falling asleep. We can read without being disturbed about this Prabhu who said that to me, or that Mataji who said that to me like that, or this boss who's on my case. And then if we can do our sadhana properly, then when we do our service, we'll do it in the right consciousness. Our body's fit and healthy, and we've got the right mentality. So then when we do service, we get the maximum benefit out of it. So ultimately, we have to take care of everything. We can't neglect anything. We can't spiritually bypass. We can't just chant Hare Krishna and expect that that's going to digest the 10 liters of halava we ate yesterday. Like, the holy name is all powerful, but at the same time, Krishna expects us to use our intelligence to look after the machinery that we've been given. Sattva Gun is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. All the principles are there, all the things that we should do to live a balanced lifestyle so that we can actually properly engage in spiritual practices. So in conclusion, we want a balanced program. we can't neglect our health, because if we neglect our health, our sadhana will suffer. And if our sadhana suffers, our service will become more like a chore or work rather than a loving offering. But at the same time, if we get too caught up in our health and diet and exercise and things like that, we may spend so much time focusing on that because it's so important. It's the foundation, right? But if we spend too much time on it, then we can neglect our reading time. We can maybe skip a Bhagavatam class because I've got to do my 1 hour yoga session at that time or something like that. So we can't go too far one way or the other. We need to have a balanced, healthy program. And the thing is, that's not the same for everyone. Everyone's driving a different machine. Our bodies, our minds, they're all different. So we need to apply the teachings and principles accordingly. And we may not best know how to do that. So to do it, it's a good idea to take guidance, have someone who can give us some feedback, figure it out, help us see what works best for us. For those who are married, you're very fortunate. You've got someone who can give you daily instant feedback about how you might be off balance. Um, at the same time, for many of us, someone who knows us well, who is spiritually senior to us, and who we have a good relationship with, is a really good option to help us with a balanced program. I've got a lot more that I could say, but I'll leave it there. I've said a fair amount for people to digest. So we need to have everything taken care of, all of our physical, emotional, intellectual needs, as well as approaching the ultimate need of being Krishna conscious. That's the most important need. There's no doubt about that. But to do that properly, we need a balanced, healthy lifestyle when approaching our Krishna consciousness. So I'll stop there, see if there's any comments, any feedback, or any questions anyone here may have. Thank you for joining us this morning. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavata Pranam. Thank you very much for the very nice class. All the kinds, very nicely you have explained the points, and particularly about the balance of life. That is very important, as is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita also. Yuktaharo Vyarasya Yukta Tishtasya Karmasya. So everything should be balanced. And in this, and particularly in the present juncture of this world, everybody, I mean, the whole things have gone to such an extent that that the life the Bhagavatam tells us to indulge it is very difficult. I mean, very nicely depicted, because in our system, initial Krishna has created Varnashrama, 4 stages of life and 4 stages of social order, but they are only to elevate human being from animal life to human life. But Bhagavatam speaks of even much higher life. Dharma projita koitavoyatra. There is no completely non-envious people there. That is we should aspire for an ideal life without being free from all envy and things, and only then we can think of, I mean, we can go to God, because Lord is the purest person, and to go to him we have to be pure to that extent. But at the same time, we have to take advantage of what is around us, because that is what we have got. So, as you have very nicely told, you have to take shelter of Krishna, and Krishna, through the help of senior person who has knowledge about that, who can guide us. And it is good that we have taken shelter of our spiritual master who is guiding us. But at the same time, we have to pursue our own journey with our own, because each of us have got, as you have told, as an individual machine. So we have to find out the correct course of action for each one of us, and that is our responsibility. And of course, our guru and our devotees and association of devotees helps us do that, and Prabhupada has created a nice situation for us. So we should take advantage of that and should not forget the goal of life, because if we forget that, then our human life becomes a failure. In spite of all facilities we have got, if we cannot make use of it, then and the days are going very fast. And there is a verse, I think, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Ayur Horati Voi Umsham Uddanastam. It's telling that by the rising and setting of the sun of the day, one day is gone from our life. And one who has taken best use of it, who has remembered the Lord and done his duty accordingly, he has only his time hasn't gone. But for others, in this way, we come to the end of our life, and if we are not successful, then the whole life becomes a failure. So we should be very careful and 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 decide our course accordingly, so that we don't fail it ultimately. And that is the goal of human life. So Hare Krishna for bringing out that point very nicely. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for your Shastric comments, concluding all of what's been brought up today. Very nice verses that you quoted that are completely relevant to what we've discussed. Thank you very much. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Any comments they'd like to make? Any questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for this beautiful lection. Especially, it's very relevant to the people who live family life, which is very important. I have one question. I've already asked Devamrita Maharaj, and I've got an answer. I'm just curious, maybe someone else can share. How do you encourage each other as a husband and wife to progress in spiritual life, not just by your example, but are there any other tips and suggestions? Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. One thing that I've heard, and this is not just from Devamrita Maharaj, but those in India as well, because some of the people I hear from, like Chaitanya Charan, Braja Bihari Prabhu, they have a lot of experience in India outreach as well and within the temple, is that, and I'm not putting this on you at all, but this is just a general comment that's made. And this goes for myself here in the ashram I'm in too, the Brahmachari ashram. We tend to become familiar with those that we live with. And we forget that sometimes that can actually be quite exalted and quite advanced. In other words, there was one comment that was made, and this was, there was a question put to the audience. Has anyone had an argument today? And, everyone put their hand up, or within the last week. And then it was said, well, has anyone had an argument with a devotee in the last week? And everyone put their hand up except for one person. And then they asked, oh, in the whole last week, you haven't had an argument with a devotee at all? And he says, no, the only person I've had arguments with is my wife. And, but that person's wife, of course, is a devotee. So they somehow overlooked that fact that their wife is a devotee. So yes, the person that we live so closely to, we can often overlook that they're actually quite an exalted person, especially if they're practicing the process of Krishna consciousness. One of the things that I've heard, this is from Bhakti Vikash Maharaj, who was quoting Dina Bandhu Prabhu. And this is specifically addressing your question, but it can apply for anyone, but it was specifically for husband and wife, is that the man needs to understand that when the wife is complaining about something, she doesn't necessarily want to be a solution. She just wants to be heard. So the man needs to learn that. If he can learn that now, then his life will be a lot better very quickly. And similarly, on the other side, the lady needs to learn that sometimes the man just needs to be left alone and do what he needs to do to fix a problem rather than talk about it too much. He just needs to be left alone so he can get on, fix the problem, and then that will make his mind peaceful. So if each of us understand how the other person's mind works and appreciates that and respects that, then we can be more peaceful. So the man needs to learn that the wife likes to talk, and especially if they have a problem, they'd like to just talk it out. And that talking, that will solve the problem for them because they'll feel like they've been heard. So I'm just quoting Dina Bandhu Prabhu, who's like probably one of the most senior grihastas in our movement, who resides in Vrindavan. I'm sure many of you know who Dina Bandhu Prabhu is, the person who takes tours in Vrindavan, who's written so many books on Vrindavan and like that. He's very famous for his guitar. And yes, on the other side, that the wife, she should understand that sometimes the man just needs a space to spend time fixing the problem that is there. And when that problem is fixed, that will make his mind peaceful. That's the way his mind generally works. So that's a general principle. Of course, there's always details, but that's something that can generally work in relationships. So in other words, just understanding and respecting and appreciating how the other person works and functions, and not treating them like ourselves, because as they say, men are from Mars and women are from Venus, or something like that, that book. You know, we're a different species, even though we're within the human species. And even within the Varnas, you know, I live with people in this ashram here, the Brahmachari ashram, and so many of us are so different. We're from different countries. We've got different natures. We just don't really fully click. So we have to spend some time appreciating and understanding each other's natures and how they work and cultural backgrounds that they're from. And if we just listen, just carefully listen to the other person without judgment, that's a very important thing. Non-judgmental acceptance. Just listen to the other person in a non-judgmental, accepting frame of mind. Because if you impose what you're thinking on them, then it basically blocks you from hearing them. Because they actually have a legitimate way of seeing the world. And just because it's not yours doesn't mean it's not right. But we tend to do that. We judge everyone according to how we perceive the world, but that's wrong. That's wrong. Because Krishna is the ultimate super soul, and he's got the supreme neutral perspective. So when we're listening to someone, we need to try to pretend, for the sake of argument, that we're Krishna, in the sense that we're being neutral, just non-judgmental and accepting. Then when we do that and we hear like that, then we can actually begin to understand them. But as soon as we begin judging them, we block ourselves off from understanding them. So I don't know if that's exactly addressing your question, but I've said a few things there, so hopefully something is helpful. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. I have to go now. I'm sure most of you probably need to get out of here soon too. So thank you very much for attending this morning's Bhagavatam class. I hope you have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna, Vanchakalpa Strubhascha, Kripa Sindhubhye.
Sindhubhya eva cha patitanam
Patitanam pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo namo namah.
Anantapati
Anantapoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai.
jai.
His Grace Gadai Gauranga Prabhu ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur
Jai.
Premanandi,
Hari Hari Bol.
All
Hare
glories to
Krishna.
assembled devotees. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.